Good morning, everyone. Here's another Rollo Devo, still in Genesis 39, looking at the episode where Joseph is sold to Potiphar, betrayed by his wife, and then put in jail for something he didn't do. Remember, yesterday we kept focusing on God's presence with Joseph. Since God is with Joseph, he's walking between him and the edge the whole time, keeping Joseph going, and the same is true for us. God also blessed Joseph, but it wasn't so much that Joseph could get everything he wanted or live a comfortable life. God blessed Joseph so that he could be a blessing to others. And Jesus blesses us for the same reason, to be a blessing to others. Yet yesterday's Devo left open the question of how did God's blessing affect Joseph himself? What are Joseph's personal blessings in all of this? So we're going to look at those. They're a little bit harder to see in Genesis 39. But there are two important things that we can see here from deductive reasoning in the passage. There may be others, of course, but these two are crucial for Joseph's growth as God guides him towards saving Egypt, civilization, and the family line of Jesus himself. Remember, he cannot just be in the right place at the right time. He also has to be the right man in the right place at the right time. So there's two things I want us to see here. First, much like after Shasta's encounter with Aslan, as we talked about Tuesday, when Joseph encountered God and learned that God was present with him always, Joseph was strengthened to endure the hardships that he faced. I mean, think about what it would have taken for Joseph to succeed in Potiphar's house, much less in the prison later on. He was a Hebrew taken about 250 miles away to a foreign land, completely foreign to him. Before he made it anywhere in Potiphar's house, he would have to learn the Egyptian language, cultures, customs, all of which would have been a difficult task and would have taken a long time. But instead of giving up, just playing dumb and doing the basic labor that he needed to do just to get by, Joseph endured and learned what he needed to learn to serve God well where he was. God blessed Joseph not by removing the hardship from Joseph, but by strengthening Joseph by being present with him so that he could endure. God's blessing for us is often the same way. It's not by removing the trials that we are facing, but by strengthening us to do those trials, to endure those trials, so that we grow through him. This is what the book of Hebrews tells us about Jesus. He didn't come to remove hardship from his people, but to experience hardship like we do, so that he could help us endure it as our great high priest. And that is real love. Like a parent not taking away your homework or doing it for you just because it's hard, but by helping you struggle through it so you grow from it. Second thing we can see here is that God gave Joseph a bigger perspective on this whole situation. We see this briefly in the part of the passage where Joseph resists Potiphar's wife. When Joseph responds to her advances, he tells her that his master had been good to him and trusted him with everything. So we might expect him to say in verse 9, "How can I sin against my master, your husband?" But that's not what he says, is it? He says, "How can I do this great evil or great wickedness and sin against God?" Because God was personally present with Joseph. He realized that all of his service he was really doing to God, not to Potiphar. If he were to sin with Potiphar's wife, he would ultimately have been sinning against his true master, betraying his true master, God. God's presence with Joseph gave him a bigger picture perspective on all of his service, seeing that it is ultimately everything he does, from the smallest thing to the biggest thing, to God himself. That all that he did in Potiphar's house and in the prison was in the end for God, not for them. Like we've talked about in the past couple of depots, Jesus is always with us. And his presence with us blesses us so that we can be a blessing to others and helps us to endure. Yet his presence with us also blesses us so that we can be strengthened by him by understanding the bigger perspective on what's going on. Paul tells us in Colossians 3:23-24, "Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord, not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive your inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. He is our master in whatever we do. In all things, he is ultimately the one to whom we do them. And so that means that when we sin by disobeying or something else, we sin against him ultimately. Right now, you are probably tired of being at home, tired of doing online work, tired of putting up with your siblings, tired of not being able to go out and do the things that you want to do. I am too. But the presence of God, of Christ with us, strengthens us to endure, and it makes all of our work, from the most important things we think we are doing to the most menial and boring tasks or chores that we have, all of that is work done to Him. When we do it for Him, it brings Him honor and glory, no matter how big or small it is. Joseph did that in this story, even though he ended up being put in prison. And God was glorified through it. You can do that when you're taking out the trash, doing your homework, or just putting up with a sibling who's obnoxious to you. So you think about that, and I'll see you again tomorrow.